Before the Sparkledun was the Comparadun, which is actually an adaptation off of the haystack. I do have a longer tag that I'm going to save. I'm tying this on a number 12 dry fly hook with light olive thread. The wing is going to be deer. So I've put a little bit of thread on the hook with a little dam, cut a piece of deer, cleaned the butts, and stacked it. Little fuzzy stuff there I need to clean out. I'm just grabbing the tips of that deer bunch, and now I'm measuring about the length of the hook shank and winding loose wrap, and then I'm going to pull up and cinch down on that. And it's okay if it flares. Actually, you want it to flare because that shows that you have a good hard knot on it. And if it does rotate around the shank, that's okay. So a few tight wraps here to make sure that that wing is secure in place. I'm pushing back just a little bit to make sure that I have some hook shank in front, and then clipping the butts at an angle. I'm going to kind of clean up all of this junk back here so I don't have to wrap over so much. And I'm going to take my thread and just wrap over the end of that angle cut and hold it in place, trying to keep it from spinning. Again, if it spins, it's not a big deal. Just try to get it back onto the top of the hook shank, and then lay down a taper over the butt ends, the cut ends of that deer hair wing. And I can push back up on the wing to help it to start standing up and flaring properly. Although I have to be careful with that too, because I can get it too far back too early, and then those fibers tend to get in the way. Nice taper. Now, I'm using the recipe from Kaufman's dry fly book, and he says a dun tail, and you could use hackle feathers. I'm going to use bristles off of a cheap paintbrush. So I have 2 bristles. I've evened the tips, and I'll tie those in, and I'm measuring about a shank length. Wrap up over those, hold them on top of the hook shank, and make sure that they are securely tied in. Trying to find the butt ends of those bristles, and I'm using a bodkin to pull them up and make sure that they aren't clipped with some deer hair, only clipping the butt ends. Then I'm going to push up and try to split those tail hair. The recipe and instructions in Kaufman's book calls for this tail to be split. So now I'm taking that tag that I saved when I tied my thread in, putting it around the shank of the hook underneath, and then pulling that up through between those 2 fibers and wrapping up over the top of that thread. That'll help keep those fibers separated. They're still going to want to go together when I put the dubbing body on, but this helps to keep them separated. Clip out the ends of the thread. For the body, I am using some sparkle dubbing, Antron dubbing. The recipe calls for Antron. It doesn't specify the color. So tie these to the hatch. What are the color of the mayflies that are hatching that you are comparing them to? And we do use the word dun in a couple different ways. One, it's a stage in the mayfly life as well as a color. So here it's the stage in the mayfly life. Wrapping that dubbing around that tapered body trying to keep it tight. So make a couple wraps and then tighten up on that dubbing. And this is where I start to get in trouble with that wing that I pushed up or stood up too soon, because those fibers are just going to get on my nerves. They want to get involved in the dubbing, and I got to keep them separate. But tighten up that dubbing loop and wrap it up right up against the wing. Again, trying to keep that loop tight, keep the fibers from the wing out of the way. I'm going to add a little bit more dubbing now and wrap the thorax or head, which will be in front of the wing, and this will help the wing to stand up. So wrap that dubbing on my thread, and then I'm going to grab that bunch of deer hair wing and take my dubbing up in front of those, try to pull back on all those hair. There's a couple in there that just don't want to cooperate. But I'll pull them back and eventually get my dubbing up in front of that wing and then wrap in the thread, and then I can wrap the head. Head is mostly whip finish, so I'm going to put whip finish on here, and I'll do a 5-turn whip finish. Number isn't so important, I guess. It's just enough to create a little bit of a head. Clip off my thread, and I can put some head cement on that if I want. You can see that the tail is nice and split, and that the wing is only on the top side of the hook shank. Front view, I want to try to make sure that I have a good 180 degrees there in that fan for the wing. That'll help it float. So the Comparadun